I have a question for you. If you could choose to hire only non-smokers, would you do that? U-Haul in the U.S. did. As of February 1st, the company no longer hiring people who smoke in the 21 states that don't have protections for smokers' rights. So could we see this in Canada? Employment lawyer Stuart Rudner is joining us to answer all of our burning questions here. Okay, let's start with, smoking's not illegal. So how are they able to do this?
Yeah, so this story has generated a lot of debate, and people have complained that U-Haul is being judgmental and biased and it's not fair, and all of that may be true. But as I've said to a lot of people lately, there's no law that says that you have to be fair in the hiring process. And the reality is that a lot of the best candidates don't get the job, and sometimes it's because of silly reasons, like the person didn't like the color of the shirt they wore, or the boss made it known that they wanted their cousin hired. That may not be fair, but it's not unlawful. And the general rule, with some exceptions, is that an employer can hire whoever they want.
Well, what about the addiction aspect of this?
Yeah, so the exception to the general rule is that every jurisdiction in Canada has human rights legislation, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of a number of grounds like race and gender and sexual orientation, or relevant to this discussion, disability. And some addictions, like alcoholism or drug dependency, have been recognized as disabilities. If you are addicted, then you cannot be discriminated against in the hiring or the firing process, as long as there actually is an addiction.
I'm wondering about this company in particular. When we talk about U-Haul and saying, they're not hiring non-smokers in those 21 states, what if you're already a smoker?
Well, I've had that question. I've had the question of how do you define a smoker? Is it someone who smokes a pack a day, or is it someone who has a couple of cigarettes on the weekend when they're out with friends? And that's an important distinction legally, because legally, like I said, if you have an addiction, that's a disability, and you can't be fired or refused a job because of it. If you're a casual smoker, you actually don't get that same protection unless, and I hate to make it even more complicated, unless you are perceived to have a disability. So there have been cases where someone was not, for example, addicted to drugs, but the employer thought they were and fired them because of that. And our human rights legislation says if you have a disability or a perceived disability, you're entitled to protection.
Okay, so we're seeing this happen in the States. Are we going to see this happen here?
I think it's very unlikely. And I assume we didn't see it happen here because they got legal advice and they were told that our human rights laws would prevent anything like this from happening. So I think it's very unlikely.
All right, Stuart, we appreciate your time. I just want to ask you one more thing about cannabis. What do you think about that?
Well, now that we're in the era of legalized cannabis, I think that the law would treat it largely the same way. And in fact, our courts have already said over and over again that addiction to drugs is a disability. So if you are addicted, you're going to get the same protection. You can't lose your job. You can't be refused a job. But again, if you're just a casual user, then you don't get that same protection.
It really is a fascinating conversation, that's for sure.
This is why I love what I do.
All right, good for you. All right, Stuart, thank you for being in here today.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.